And if people make mistakes with the monetary policy, they don't suffer as a result, I think. It's hard to even tell that they have made a mistake because there's no like control group or anything. And so I think that what Bitcoin represents is this safety valve. It gives people an alternative. If they don't like how the monetary policy in their country is being run, they can switch to Bitcoin. And if they don't like how Bitcoin is being run, they can switch to some other cryptocurrency.
So hello and welcome to another episode of Chatter. Today I'm talking to Paul Sztorc, who is an independent Bitcoiner and Bitcoin researcher. I hope I have pronounced your name right. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much.
No problem. So before we start, I have to plug two things really quick. First of all, my book, Brexit, The Establishment Civil War, is now available to order. You can get it on Amazon, on bookshop.org, and hopefully in some bookstores now that places are opening back up. And also I have to plug our sponsor, ExpressVPN. You can currently get 35% off of 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. So Paul, we are here to talk all about Bitcoin, since it's been very, very in the news. And this is hopefully the first of many podcasts on cryptocurrency and decentralized finance that I'm going to do. So why don't we just lay the ground for the conversation we're going to have? To you, what is a cryptocurrency?
Okay, the crypto part of the word, it refers to cryptography, obviously, but that's in direct contrast to a government fiat currency. So when you have the US dollar or British pound or a euro, you basically, at the end of the day, if you boil it all down, you have an account with the government. You may have an account with a bank, but that bank has an account with the central bank, which is run by the government. So but really, at the end of the day, you have an account with the government. That's your fiat, your traditional government currency. And this is in direct contrast to that, where you have basically an account that is calculated by a software algorithm. And so the big implication of that is that the software algorithm, it doesn't have any idea if you are physically located in any individual country or breaking any laws or doing anything politically subversive. It doesn't know if you're white, black, male or female, 4 years old, if you're not even a person at all and you're just a computer following instructions. So that's the big practical distinction.
So where did you first come across the idea of a digital cryptocurrency? When did it first cross your radar?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because people had been telling me about it for a while, and I always thought this is the stupidest thing ever. And in fact, the story I often tell, which is 100% the truth, is that there was this free state project where a bunch of people in America were going to move to the state of New Hampshire and then politically organize to become more active there. And they were sending out emails about coordinating this big project. And I'd signed up for the email list. And one of them was like, if you come, we'll give you free Bitcoin. It was like 50 free Bitcoin or something if you go. This is like in 2010 or something, a long time ago. And I literally was so angry. I was like, these stupid libertarians, you can't run money like this. You can't just start a new one up because network effects and because, it's a victim of its own success. If it succeeded, someone else there'd be copycats. And so I remember distinctly something like that email stood out as being annoying, and I unsubscribed from the mailing list either immediately afterwards or sometime after. I was like, this is just so stupid. I can't believe I ever threw in with these jokers. But what really changed my mind completely about it was there was an article about Silk Road. I think it was in Gawker maybe, or Wired, I don't remember. But there was an article about Silk Road, and it was basically, it just explained a couple things. One was that these people they absolutely needed Bitcoin to complete the transaction. They couldn't use a credit card. It would have their real name on it. They couldn't use a check. They couldn't use cash because you'd have to just mail the cash to someone or whatever. And then, that's not a great idea. And so they absolutely had to use Bitcoin to do the transaction. But what also struck me as interesting about it was that a bunch of crazy drug dealers and drug addicted people, they had gotten it to work, like it was a complicated technology, but it worked well. It was like user friendly enough to be used. And that really caught me by surprise. I was like, huh, because, you thought about it as this complicated thing, but then you're like, oh, random guy down the street. I mean, the joke's on you, right? Random guy down the street is already using this, and Silk Road was doing enormous amounts of revenue and it was enormously profitable. So just objectively, the economic value was there. And so I thought, well, this is going to be for every illegal transaction in the world. But it can also be used for every legal transaction in the world. And the illegal distinction, a certain time and place, like slavery was once legal in the United States. And in fact, I'm in Connecticut right now. There used to be a law that said if someone came up from the South and just pointed at someone and said, that person escaped from my slave plantation in the South, you had to help capture them and return them to the South, or you could be fined an enormous amount of money and sent to jail. It's called the Fugitive Slave Act.
Right.
So that was a law at a different time. And, and all around the world, we have different governments who, governments are just not perfect. In societies figure out what the law is over time. The law is growing and changing and improving all the time, which means that at every stage in its evolution, it has flaws that need to be fixed. But it also includes all kinds of stuff like just trying to get your money out of China and escape the country with your life or something, or anything in, what are you going to do if you're female and you're in Saudi Arabia or something? What are you going to do if you're in a country with hyperinflation? So this whole legal, illegal thing, everyone likes to, of course, pretend like they would never, ever, ever, ever be associated with anything illegal, and they wouldn't go out with someone who would, and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like, you want to avoid this thing, but deep down, we all know that, there's a lot of tax laws that no one obeys. There's speeding on the highway. There's a lot of, these city ordinances about when you can mow your lawn, blah, blah, blah. So I was just kind of like, oh, wow, this thing is like taken off. Like I thought it was so dumb. It's actually so practical, and people are already using it. And I just thought, what's missing is that everyone else is thinking as I thought before. When I got the email, I was like, this is some scam or some stupid thing. That's the mistake. They don't realize that the project is already like completed. They're already being used in commerce.
Yeah, like the idea has already reached its conception. It's not like they're still figuring out how to work it. Like it's more about integration now than it is about like figuring out how the technology itself works.
Yeah, the cool thing I wanted to mention about the drug dealer thing, it was kind of important because you would think the drug dealer is already criminal. So if they could steal the money, they would.
Yeah.
Because they got nothing. And also the drug addicts, they really want the drugs. So if they could game the thing and spend the same money twice or something to get more drugs, they would. So you had this situation where actually really, really like selfish people who had nothing to lose, it was working for them. And so I was like, oh man, like, that was what made me think, oh, the project is already finished.
So you're saying if there was an opportunity to exploit it for fraud, or if there was a way to scam people specifically by like attempting to make transactions in cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin in this case, but like in any other cryptocurrency, that it would be that they would have already done it. Like that would have been the first breeding ground for it, would have already resulted in loads of scams, but instead it worked. And that's, for you, one of the remarkable parts of it.
Yeah, so it's very stress tested. I think everyone wanted this transaction to fail. The buyer, the seller, the government, but it would still go through. So that's what made me really think, oh, I had really misunderstood it. And I was like, oh, I have to look into this more. Yeah, and then you look into it more, and you learn a lot more about your own. At first I was like, why don't they just use credit cards on this site? And then you're like, oh, of course, because your name and your address is on there. But it's more than that. It's like, you call up the credit card company and just say you didn't buy something and you lost the card. They may always make the merchant eat it. So there's like this entire world that you don't see if you're like a just merely a consumer, or even just like an upper middle class type white guy, you just sail through life and you just think, oh, like a cash, a check, a credit card, a debit card are all like equivalent to you. But then you start to dig into this and you're like, oh, there's all these big differences.
I mean, I guess the speed of which it can be done is also a bonus, especially if you're talking about transferring money around the world. But like the big question I want to kind of ask here at the start, I say at the start, we've been talking for a while, but anyway, is that there up until the 1970s in America, and I'm not actually sure when we came off the gold standard in Britain, but essentially the money in America, the dollar, was backed by gold up until the 1970s. I think it was 71, 72. It got removed. And so it was no longer backed by something physical. It was just based on each individual's trust in the dollar. Like the dollar will still be worth $1 in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. Okay, save for a small inflation. Like it's a safe place for your money to be in, the dollar. It's not gonna get hyperinflated out of existence. It's not going to just people are going to continue to take it. It's all based on our confidence in the fact that the price will remain the same. So what is the difference here between Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency now and how we now operate the financial system, where our currency may be like the central issued currency of a government, but it's not actually backed by anything physical? What's the difference here between that and Bitcoin, aside from the obvious, like the fact it's digital?
Yeah, well, I mean, the US dollar and most currencies are almost completely digital already. And in fact, all currencies are really abstract if you kind of think about it. But even like, the cash in your wallet is really like a physical coupon for the digital account at the commercial bank. Commercial bank has an account at the central bank. I think, well, obviously, if I could try to answer your question, I mean, both of them are really backed by nothing, and they're really both digital. Which is to say, they're backed by the community that would accept them. And the question is, why would someone accept something for the first time if no one else is accepting it? But that turned out to have, in Bitcoin's case and in fiat currency's case, that had turned out to have an answer, which is that you had a reason to believe that people would accept it in the future. So I could get more into that if you like, but let me see if I can try to drive it exactly with what is exactly your question is. How is it? I mean, as I said, one is run completely by software algorithm and the other is not. And so the other is run by people. And so when you have people involved, you have a lot of advantages. People can use reason. They can just get out of a bad rule that they don't like. They can just, in an emergency, they can just drop the rule if they don't like it. But there's also a lot of disadvantages because you have basically corruption. How do you know that the people are running it in the best interests of the users of the currency and not in their own interest or in someone else, some politician's interest? You really don't unless you join the team and work for 30 years and try to learn everything about what they're doing. It'll be very difficult for you to even tell whether or not they are corrupt. But in the case of cryptocurrency, there's just this algorithm. And a lot of people have, the algorithm itself it could be many ways, but the ways that this Bitcoin is, for example, they made choices that are like the 21 million coin limit, the fixed supply. They say, we will only create so many units. And this is now hard-coded into the software. So it's a very hard limit. It won't be changed by any person. And so then when people say, well, what do I want to, I have some savings. Do I want to hold it in US dollar, which can be, of which an infinite amount can be created tomorrow and which trillions is being created as we speak? Or do I want to hold it in Bitcoin where I know that this is the exact schedule that the money would be created? And it won't change at all because it's hard-coded in.
So what does the idea of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mean to you? Because I've seen and listened to a few people talk about it as this revolutionary piece of technology that's going to change the world and upend all of our current institutions, financial, political, societal, otherwise, that it's just going to change the entire world, upend power structures, finish fiat money altogether, that we will all just be using Bitcoin for the future. What is, obviously these people are quite optimistic, but I mean,
Yes.
they're a lot closer to being right than anyone would have said that they were this time last year. So, I mean, I don't think we can rule them out.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to you? Like, what does the technology represent in your eyes?
Yeah. Well, I agree with those people. I'm a believer. To me, I really think that it's a lot of things at once. I mean, a lot of people just say it's freedom or whatever. But I think that, I mean, I have training in economics, and I have a lot of education training. I mean, I've worked in the field of economics in the United States for a while. And I think that a lot of economics, including monetary policy, is pre-scientific, which is to say there's no, scientific to me is like error correction over time. And if people make mistakes with the monetary policy, they don't suffer as a result, I think. It's hard to even tell that they have made a mistake because there's no like control group or anything. And so I think that what Bitcoin represents is this safety valve. It gives people an alternative. If they don't like how the monetary policy in their country is being run, they can switch to Bitcoin. And if they don't like how Bitcoin is being run, they can switch to some other cryptocurrency. So that it restores competition, currency competition.
It's something that's kind of been erased in a way over the past sort of 20, 30 years with the, like for in Europe, for example, they've erased nearly all of the European currencies in favor of the euro. The dollar has become like really, really widely used around the world. I mean, I still can't get over the fact that I was in Vietnam, like the country that was terrorized by America for 40 years. And aside from their own currency, and sometimes even more so, they want the US dollars. I still find that such a bizarre thing. I was like, a bizarre concept, because you're so far from America. There's seemingly no link, but people trust the dollar so much that for whatever reason, I mean, maybe that'll change with how much of it is being printed at the moment, but it's hard to imagine something other than that being the world currency. Do you really see like a digital currency becoming the global standard in a way?
Well, I certainly think it has the potential. I don't think it's inevitable, but I do think that it's absolutely possible. I mean, how it would happen would be these lower. Well, you can see how, like, if there's many, like, say there's 200, let's say there's 150 currencies, whoever's in last place, no one really wants that currency other than the fact that the local people that they trade with often are using it. But that's vulnerable to being taken over by like the US dollar, Venmo, or something like Bitcoin that is kind of everywhere at once. So you can see it just working its way up the list and having these lower currencies die and get absorbed into the larger currencies. And then you can just see maybe there'll be a world where there's only like, the British pound, the euro, the yen, the US dollar, the Chinese RMB, and like a couple currencies, and then Bitcoin. And then you can just see, there'll always be a currency on the list that is the lowest ranked. And that one, people will just think, well, maybe I should hold Bitcoin with my savings. And then if I want to hold Bitcoin, maybe I should accept Bitcoin, cut out the middleman. And then they'll just think, maybe I should try to earn Bitcoin maybe I should try to, now that I have all this Bitcoin, I want to spend it, cut out the middleman that way. So yeah, it has that potential.
So how close or how long do you think we are away from like a more mass adoption? we're obviously in the middle of like a big crypto boom at the minute over the past 6 months, where like the market cap of both individual cryptocurrencies and generally is just skyrocketing. Like I can't believe Dogecoin made millionaires out of people. It's just madness. I know my brother has a hardware wallet that he can't access with a whole bunch on that he'd mined in like 2013, so he's not particularly happy about that. But
common story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my mom can't get her head around the fact that he can't get access to it. She's like, oh, why doesn't he have a backup code, or why can't he email someone about it, or
email someone?
Yeah. But
can't email anyone.
Yeah, exactly. But it begs the question for me then, where do you get that crossover point where not just like internet denizens and people who are obsessed with technology, when does it become, or can it even bridge that gap, or are we simply just going to wait for the people who like legacy money, as I'm now calling it, and to sort of just
die off
essentially, or succumb, or
Max, I think it's commonly misattributed to Max Planck, but didn't he say, someone said science progresses funeral by funeral?
Yeah.
I think he didn't actually say that, but
I think it's one funeral at a time, I think is the quote, but yeah.
Well, I think, you have to consider like other things like the car, or also the internet, though, basically is the big one. You can see how in like the 70s and 80s and 90s, the people who got involved in the internet were very atypical. But now today, you can't exist without. You try to open like a bakery or something, and you don't have a website. You basically can't. So, that took a while, but there's a lot of reasons to believe it would be faster with Bitcoin, because first of all, all technological progress is changing at an accelerating rate. So it's just later. But also, the internet never like really, 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 really disproportionately rewarded you personally if you were early, like in like secret, untraceable, internet untaxable, like eCash or something. So there's like a huge incentive to like learn really, really quickly. I think that will obviously a second factor that would make it go much faster than internet adoption. Obviously, there's an enormous learning curve, but think about the learning curve with the internet also. There was all this stuff about, everyone had to learn about like how to unplug your router and plug it back in, and like how to like what were all the things that people had to learn, like how to use a web browser, how to use. You can do this now, but I remember when you couldn't, like when you used Google, you couldn't like type in like, where is the nearest bakery or something, ? Enter. Like you can do that now, but there was a time when you couldn't do that at all. If you type that in, the results would just be nonsense. And but you had to like learn how to use Google. Like, okay, most important word first, second word. I always put like troubleshooting if it's about. Put the name of the software program. They're like all this stuff that we all know now that we had to learn over a long. Many people had to learn how to type. Yeah. Doctors in America didn't know how to type at all until like many of them still don't even know how to type, because this is considered like assistance work. They just write it out and someone else will type it. So, it's laughable, right, that you could have such an elite professional. But they had to do, when they did the electronic medical records, they had to have like talk-to-speech dictation software. This was like 20 years ago when that software was like cutting edge and it like basically sucked. They had to do it because so many doctors could not, type. It sounds incredible, but that was reality, because this was just considered like a secretary skill that you wouldn't do if you were the elite doctor. You should talk to someone who was in the industry. I don't know that much about, but that was like a shocking. There's just all these things. Society is always going to change. Remember, like barcodes were invented, in like the 50s and 60s. That was like a weird idea at first. So I don't know. You asked like how long is it going to take, but I think probably, we look at how far it's come in the first 10 years. So the first 10 years went from totally being written off by everyone to now today, where it's still mostly misunderstood, but you do have a big difference today. I think Elon Musk really was like a watershed moment or a milestone or whatever metaphor you want to use, because he happened to be the richest person on the planet, but he's also like inescapably serious person. Like obviously he's very funny on social media, but he like means business, right? Like he's not screwing around. Like he will get the rockets to land right side up. If he wants to start, a company that puts a microchip in your brain, or he wants to start a company that, does.
Bill Gates wouldn't get away with that.
Do it. Yeah. That's the irony. Yeah. Well, there was a funny meme about that was like all this like whatever Bill Gates, and then it was like the skepticism of the vaccine, brain control, and then it was like, oh, like hold my beer or whatever part of Elon Musk with like Neuralink or something. Yeah. He's going to volunteer to direct brain surgery with electrodes and things. Mm. So, but he'll just be like, what do I want to see in the world? Okay, I want more solar power. I'll just build it, So something like that is
such an insane. It's so mad to have that level of resources. And I've heard that there's some big thing coming with solar batteries and Bitcoin combined, and I have no idea what on earth that means. I've just seen it in about I've seen like 6 different things about it, and I was like, what on earth are these people talking about? So I don't know. I'll put the link in the description below of what I read if anyone wants to check out, and maybe they understand it better than I do. So do you see this technology, not specifically Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies and the underlying blockchain, as just new money, or do you see it as something beyond that?
Yeah, this is a commonly debated thing. Like, will it just take over? I don't know if my point of view is the same as most. Many Bitcoiners are only focused on the money part, but I do think, and I have written about this on my blog a little bit, that I do think it could take over a lot of anything where you would want to have digital property. So Satoshi Nakamoto himself mentioned the domain name system. Like if you want to buy a domain like google.com or whatever, you have your own domain. Again, right now you really have like an account with someone who has an account with like ICANN, who has like, if you have an account with someone, you own the name because they have decided it's in their best business interest to not to let you buy one and then not give it away to someone. So that's the whole reason they can sell them for enormous amounts of money, because they take good care of them. But really, they're running this whole scheme. Satoshi was part of the invention of something called BitDNS that later became Namecoin. That was like you could do the same thing where instead of owning coins for money, you would really own the domain, and the algorithm would calculate very easily. You'd be able to figure out who owned what domain and how to get to their server and stuff. And so you wouldn't have, like right now, the domains can be seized by the government and closed down. In this, they could not. They have to find the server and seize that, but you could hide the server behind Tor or something. So I think anything like if you want to like all of your, there's a project, David Vorak, I know, is doing this project, SIA, which is like storage on the blockchain. So all of your private files, all of your logins and your identity. Obviously, we have like the NFTs, which is like digital collectibles. But also you can manage like a cap table of like a startup or a company that way. You say, who owns what equity? Well, we'll just have this, we'll have the blockchain take care of it. And then if you want to sell it to someone else, you don't even have to let me know. Like say I'm the CEO, I give someone equity, I give them 1% of the company. They can do whatever they want. They could lose it. They could sell it to someone else, and I wouldn't even need to know necessarily. They would just own it. And no one else would need to know either. Like, the lawyers or the exchange or something. So I think it could do that. I'm a big proponent of these things, prediction markets, which say that you could have this scheme inside hermetically sealed inside the blockchain where it would be safe from tampering, and people can bet on who they think what decisions they think should be made and what the consequences would be. So as a result of that, it'd be very easy to figure out like who we should vote for, or what law we should have, or who should be the CEO of a corporation, because you could just say, if this person was the CEO, the stock price would be this. If that person was the CEO, the stock price would be that. And that way it would have an enormous impact on something that wasn't money, right? Because if you were the CEO, you wouldn't want to be fired, right? You'd want to protect your job. But there would be this thing out there that you wouldn't be able to stop that would say, if they fired you and replaced you with someone else, the stock price would go up. And now you have to work very, very hard. You have to work very hard every day to make sure that you are making the company more valuable.
Could you go back there a second? I kind of lost you in like, I heard what you said. I just mean that I didn't quite like follow through what you meant. So you're saying that the blockchain could be used to make companies more secure?
Well, right now we have a problem where, so you can imagine like a giant pyramid with the CEO at the top, or the president or the prime minister or whatever at the top. And then they have their people that work for them, and then people that work for them, and there's staff, and then they produce something that they sell to the customer at the bottom. And if you are the CEO and you don't like what your employee is doing, you can replace them. So as a result, and you live it every day. So you're going to work 24/7. Even if you're not there 24/7, you're thinking about your job 24/7. And you have a lot of control and ownership over everything beneath the pyramid. And that's very efficient if the guy at the top is a good person. But of course, we don't always get the best people. It could be someone like, I don't know, Kim Jong-un or something. He's running it very well, but for himself and not for the benefit, or not for any other. The point is, it's only being run for himself instead of any other thing it could be run for. Now, the question is, how do you know? People always disagree about who should be this top person. And some people say, well, it should be, it should be someone from the Labor Party or whatever. And some people say, well, it should be this guy, my friend, but then they all disagree. And it's very hard for a normal person to know who should be the leader. Especially, just think like the corporation case. One person says, what if someone said we should actually replace Elon Musk with this senior engineer at Tesla? Because he's actually even better than Elon at running the company. Well, most people would just be like, I don't know. That could be true. That could be false. They're going to stick with the devil they know, probably, versus the devil they don't. But no one really knows is the problem. So the problem for the corrupt CEOs is that we don't know which are corrupt and which are good. And the same for the politicians. There's no way of replacing the bad politician.
Okay.
So what you do to solve this problem is you have all this betting. You make all these contracts. Some are worth more money if you replace the CEO, and some are worth more money if you keep the CEO. And some are worth more money when the company does well, and some are worth more money when the company does poorly. You multiply them all together in this big matrix, and it's not very easy to describe on a podcast using words, but it's actually pretty. If you just look at it visually, and I'm writing software to make this a lot easier to understand at the moment. But it's not super. I have like slides and visual aids and stuff.
Would you send me them? I can splice them in when you're to when I'm editing this. That would make it more useful for people. But I think I get what you mean. So let me just
let me just say the last piece is that you have something out there that pays off a ton of money if the CEO, if you replace the CEO and the company does very well. And if that thing is trading at $0, like it would pay off like an enormous amount of money, but no one wants it, then this is a clue to you that actually that person wouldn't make a good CEO. But you need like the whole matrix of prices to really think of that. But that's just what it's getting at. You say, well, I can, you just look at the prices and you just say, well, this is worth money if we replace the CEO and the company does well. But you say that, that we'll never live in a world where the CEO is replaced and the company does well. Like, what if you say we're going to replace the CEO with a monkey, and then this is going to pay if the stock price doubles, but otherwise it's worth zero, and currently it's trading for zero. Well, and this is a clue.
Hmm.
It's very hard to explain. Honestly.
No, I kind of get what you mean, but is this not so? Essentially, you're asking people, or you're going to create a system upon which you can bet on specific smart contracts in a way that have an intrinsic value dependent on the performance of, say, a company in this case. And if it then you're using the betting market or the market of purchase on these smart contracts in order to determine like the prevailing sentiment about how that company would do in the case of whatever outcome is listed in the smart contract, right? Is that
there's basically, I mean, you could do all this today. This is called conditional prediction markets. You could do it today. Anyone could do it without the blockchain tomorrow. But the trick with the blockchain is, it's like uncensorable and it's private. You can just say, because, everyone is going to be saying, like, let's say you work for this corrupt CEO. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to complain? The CEO will fire you. Are you going to go, you're going to go over the CEO's head? You're going to try to talk to the board of directors or something and say, well, this guy isn't actually that good. Well, the board of directors is going to think, okay, maybe this guy is right, maybe he's not, but he's going over people's heads. That's not through the proper channels. And then you get fired anyway. So most people have just learned over their life, except for like the autistic people or whatever who are immune from this whole, they don't even perceive this horrible political world that we all have to live in every day. People have learned kind of all these social skills that help them just live in this world where they have to keep track of who their allies are and do favors for people, be loyal to people, which is all well and good. But often when running the country or when running a big corporation, it just immediately leads to inefficiency.
So you're
the best person.
You're essentially allowing the people within a company to bet on its performance with their isn't that essentially like insider trading?
The original, there was a website called Intrade, and that was the joke of the web, intrade.com. That was the joke of the title as I perceived it, was that it was about insider trading. And they pioneered a lot of this, and they were closed down in the year 2012, and that is the year that I sort of started to get really interested in blockchain, Bitcoin for the first time. So that was when I sort of got into it all the way back then. And so it has a very long history. And insider trading is a very complicated idea. It's not, but you want all the information in the market to be aggregated into one price. So it's also irrational to care about where the information comes from. That's the ad hominem fallacy. But that is part of I wouldn't exactly describe it quite that way. But think about it. This is the good information that's being suppressed by a tyrannical leader. You want it to get out. It's really whistleblowing is more what it really is. Think about it. If you're the good CEO, then you actually aren't afraid of this at all. It will just show that you're the best. You have to keep working as hard as you can, but you were doing that anyway because you were a good CEO. So you're now immune from actually being challenged if you really are the best, and that's how it should be, right?
I wonder how the betting would look on Citadel's company right now if it was possible.
Well, there are many. I mean, for many of these, for large organizations, that just the sheer size and means it's more, and the sheer complexity. It means that it's almost impossible for a normal layperson to actually figure out, as I was saying before, to figure out what the people at the top are doing. Like what if someone said, that the U.S. government shouldn't be involved in some military conflict or another? I mean, how on earth does a regular citizen even have any idea? That as far as I have no idea. Like maybe there is something really important there that in 30 years it's all declassified, and then we're like, oh, that was really important actually. No one actually knows any of this. It's too complicated. So, especially when the organization is big, but also for a corporation. A corporation could say, you'd say like, oh, Why is the CEO getting paid so much? Or why are they having this giant lavish party? Well, maybe the party is just corrupt, stealing is just a misappropriation of funds for a party. But maybe there actually is some incredibly clever, like it's essential to make some kind of sale or to trick someone from a rival company into like doing something or else, or who knows? You don't actually know which. That's the problem. You don't actually know what is the corrupt thing, and the people in charge don't know how to justify themselves either, because they know, like, they have their plan. They have their plan for what to do. Their plan might involve throwing a big party, like at a strategic moment. Maybe to reward their employees, maybe to reward themselves, maybe for some other, just to get a bunch of people in the same room. And this is the only way to get all the right combination. And this guy's wife is going to ask this other guy's wife, and there's this big plan involved that's half subconscious or something. And they like, now, what if you had to say something like they have to explain everything in writing to the shareholders? Well, they can't, because they have a big strategy that's constantly evolving and it's half secret.
So, yeah, I like the idea. I actually really like the idea. The one concern I have, just off the top of my head, like thinking about this, and you can correct me if this is a poor assessment of it, is just that one of the things I don't like about the way our modern economic system works, especially in Britain and America, is the increased financialization of everything. So the size of it's not just the stock market anymore. It's the stock market, and then there's the futures market, and there's the options market, and there's just like there's that scene in the film The Big Short where they say, oh, if you had like $50 million worth of a CDO on the market, how much would be betting on it? And he's like, $1 billion. Yeah. It's like 20 times the size of the market. This like gambling, betting, financialization, whatever you want to call it. And I'm concerned that sounds like this is making that even larger. Maybe I'm wrong, because maybe the structure would be different if the whole financial system was based on cryptocurrency and blockchain. But what do you think of that? Is that a bad assessment?
Well, I don't know about that, a bad assessment. I mean, I think, there's a different angle. One angle is that there has been the increasing, you could argue that the increasing financialization has made the world less barbaric. So in the past, if you live in a tribe and if you like broke your leg or something, people would take care of you just because you're part of the family. But instead, we would have health insurance today, or the United States is like the exception but because no one knows what we have. I don't know, certainly. But you either have some kind of health insurance, or you have a government thing that is like health insurance, where something will come in and take care of you until you get better. And life insurance. So life insurance used to be, it was invented somewhere in the UK, I think Scotland or something, in a church, but it was hated at first because it was thought that if someone, it's thought like you're making money if your spouse dies or something, or if your parents die. So it was like, oh, like that's sinister. They had a sinister angle to it.
And it's sinister if you want your spouse to die.
Yeah, and it's like, if the person dies, the church would take care of the kid, so the community would. So why do you need money? This money kind of is like setting people off. Similarly, but you see today, if you didn't buy life insurance for your family, if you didn't, you would be irresponsible and kind of crazy. So it's flipped 180 degrees. And people thought that, the stock markets were just gambling. But if you really boil it down, like, let's say you have a rich guy who has money that he doesn't need, and you have someone else who has an idea, and that person is currently like whatever, a low-paid janitor or laborer or something. Should they really have to work for 20 or 30 years and slowly save up enough money so they can launch the idea with their own money? And the rich guy, meanwhile, he can't do anything with his money. It has to sit there doing nothing. The rich guy can just be an investor. The guy can try his idea immediately. there's no reason for you to be, it's requiring a kind of coincidence that someone have good ideas about production and also be independently wealthy. It's like only the independently wealthy people are in. But if you have capital markets, then the ideas are there in their own league, and then the money comes to them. So people are often upset by financialization, but similarly, there was a securitization for this partially created the housing crisis and financial crisis in the world. There was this securitization that you had these mortgages, they would become the CDO, and then anyone could trade it. But what that was supposed to be doing, and what it did to some extent, it did go horribly wrong, but what it did do is that, again, why, let's say you live in like Tulsa, Oklahoma or something, and there's a bunch of people who live in New York. Why is it the case that only the savers in Tulsa, Oklahoma can fund mortgages in Tulsa, Oklahoma? You just if you want a mortgage, you have to live in a place where people are saving money. Like, that doesn't really make any sense. It should just be one pool of money that's available to everyone at the best rate, the lowest interest rate. And then, it's no different than buying the cheapest, highest quality apples from a supermarket that are shipped in from wherever they can be obtained the cheapest way. So obviously that did go wrong because it deleted a lot of information about the mortgages along the way, and then it opened the door to all the scams. But I think you can't, to really answer your question, I don't think you can go back, right? Like, society can't go, if you want to go back, you have to go all the way back. Like, as Karl Popper said, you have to return to the beasts, and you have to just give everything up and just, you have to, if you want to really defeat the finance people, I think you have to use their own weapon against them, which is the entire financialization thing. You just have to make sure it works for you. I mean, you could say like, oh, I don't like being trolled on the internet, so we should just smash the internet to pieces, right? But then you have like spam filters, reputation, something. You have to come up with some new thing. Like, every problem has a new problem. So this isn't really even. This is like it's funny. It is a financialization because it's like what Enron was trying to do, where they're like monetizing the weather or something. This is like that. It's like betting on real world things that haven't happened yet. But I think the key is to just go problem by problem. And this problem that people don't know how to choose the leader is obviously, it's like among our biggest problems on the planet. And by solving it, we will open the door to new, just as the internet has new problems. If we solve the problem this way, we would open the door to new problems. But I don't think that, it's very hard to say like what on earth where is it going wrong in finance, because money is involved, right? It's not like if you do someone a favor, you have to have a good opinion of them to redeem the favor. Or they have to have a good opinion of you. Whatever. The point is, you always have like this kind of clause. If there's no money involved and there's just friendship, there's always this clause where you say, if I don't like this person, I can just walk away. With money, if they sell you a car or a bad car or something, they can take the money and ban. You can never get your revenge. So I think it's just everything involving money has a kind of suspicion to it, and rightly so. But you want it to be that way because that's the only way you can get through these other problems like groupthink or whatever. Now this is a rambling answer, but I think it won't. I think it's not so bad. I don't think it actually increases financialization significantly, and I think instead, a lot of what you had was in the past was a problem of people not caring about how their company would do in the long run. A lot of those in the financial crisis, a lot of people were just like, we're just gonna try to get a higher return than the next guy. We'll push the leverage because it doesn't matter because I already have like an enormous net worth. So, and I have CEO clauses that are like the golden parachute clauses and stuff that are like, if I get fired for any reason, I get $50 million immediately. So they're just like, who cares? So a lot of it was run badly. So who knows? But I think you can't just go back. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do to stop me from even inventing this or to stop the tide of financialization? Like, what are you going to do? You have to go further into it and try and win, and then just wait, because there'll be a new arena like soon. I think that's just part of the accelerating rate of change in the society we live in now. That was a rambling answer, wasn't it?
No, it's all right. Don't worry. So say somebody wanted to step in and regulate cryptocurrencies as if they were a security, say the SEC, for example, as they are attempting to. How successful do you think they could potentially be? But we were talking about like going back. Do you think the genie's out of the bottle? Like, is this just because I see certain governments kind of scrambling to get up on this. Like America's talked about a digital dollar. Like Britain has said we're going to make Bitcoin, which is hilarious. You've got the digital yen being pushed, and it feels like all of these nations are now just suddenly waking up to what this is, and they're scrambling to either get a piece of it or put a lid on it. Do you think that's even possible?
That's a good. Well, I mean, I think we are going to find out, right? That's like what we're here to find out, right? But I think it's important to keep in mind that this is what makes Bitcoin different from its predecessors, namely e-gold, Liberty Reserve. What was they called? There's a whole list. I used to know the whole list, and I used to rattle it off to people. But now it's been so long, you got me back to my Bitcoin intro. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but there were all these predecessors, especially Liberty Reserve, that were like digital dollars, and they were closed down by the government. But Bitcoin was designed to be decentralized so that it's not an account with a server somewhere. So there is no single spot that you could go to close it down. Now every single spot, it's all peer-to-peer. All the nodes are equal. So you have to close down, instead of just going to one spot and closing it down, you have to close down all of the nodes at once, which is just designed to be difficult. On the internet, especially when they're all in different countries, many of them are behind Tor, and you have no idea where they are. Like Silk Road, the website, that was one server behind Tor, and it took them many years to find it and close it down. But I think there's like 30 or 40,000 Bitcoin nodes behind Tor, and like 100,000 that are out in the open. Okay. And of course, once they start closing it down, people would react to that and starting them up. And they would, if Switzerland and like Iran and Brazil are the three countries that allow them all, then it doesn't just spin up more nodes there, and then people can VPN into them. So there's something, Alan Turing's universality of computation, that you can make anything all the computers can do the same thing. It doesn't matter what country they're in, and it can all be encrypted to look like something else. So it was designed to be it was designed to evade being closed down, so that if you live in a country that makes it illegal, you can still access the service. And so it was designed specifically to be that the blockchain itself would continue to work regardless of whatever laws are passed by anyone. And the blockchain has no idea who you are and if you live in that country or if that law is passed or not, again, on purpose. So they could, the SEC can pass whatever law it likes. It could ban Bitcoin from the country. But that's
from
like,
the internet.
It's kind of like banning the French language, or like banning chess from the country or something. It's like, you could go and find people who, that guy, he was speaking French, and you can put him in jail, or you can burn and destroy all the books. But French is like, it's an abstraction, so you can't like get rid of it. So but the other thing is many people have flipped now that there's so much money is involved. We have like senators from Wyoming, the state, we have these small states, and we have like a mayor in Miami. So people have flipped, and now they're pro Bitcoin because of the campaign contributions. So with the wealth comes all that corrupt stuff. So it's been working for Bitcoin, kind of like for better or for worse, or however you feel about that. But that now has, and you never really know, like a politician could say whatever they like, but maybe after they're done speaking on C-SPAN or on TV, they go home and they buy Bitcoin. Maybe you really have no idea. Like, so it's hard to tell who the real enemies are or how much they care or what. You know, the governments are, of course, mostly distracted by their own issues. You know, we have the left versus right, and then we have the entire geopolitical world. They're all like worried about all that other stuff. An interesting thing, you brought this up at the very beginning of this question that you asked, which is that it's so difficult for most people to understand that by the time it filters into this like weird bureaucratic thing, most of the people in the United States Congress are very old lawyers.
Yeah.
And they, you know, lawyers are kind of like very far away from engineers, especially like internet protocol, like researchers. So they're going to have to rely on other people. Many people are really confused about what to do. And there's also a lot of fear, like cyber attacks, cybersecurity at least in the public conversation that I can see. Again, as I was just telling you before, like I have honestly no idea what they're really doing in Congress, but I know what I hear about. You know, they're worried about China. Like, what if like you have like China, Japan, Europe, and the United States, and it's like whatever China bans, like Japan will probably push, and similarly, like. So this is part of the cleverness of the design, is that you have all these people and with these different interests, but it's all on the same internet. So anyone runs node, even if it's only Japan that runs all the nodes, it doesn't matter, the thing will survive. And that adds a kind of futility to trying to ban it. And then now you would see a lot of business leave. So then people want to be pro-jobs, pro-business. So I think to answer your question, I would say yes, the genie's probably out of the bottle. But yeah, again, rambling answer on that.
That's all right.
I mean, who honestly, how would anyone know? But yeah, something dramatic is going to happen at some point. Some country will make the mistake of going further and further down the path of trying to suppress it when they are the only one. What you'd really have to do is start a big international movement to ban it, but that would require a lot of negotiating, you know, like coordination, meetings, and that would take months and months of transparency. That would take years to do. Best case scenario, if they ever do it at all.
Well, they've been so quick on fixing. They've been so quick on the global agreements to deal with climate change.
Yeah, I know,
and to deal with sweatshops and all these other problems that we've had for 40 years that they dealt with immediately.
Yeah, we can look with confidence to their track record of success. Right. So of course, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, you know, right. It's very theoretical. Like they could all meet and coordinate to ban Bitcoin. Yeah, right after they do all that other stuff.
Yeah, but then one country will go, we should just buy some Bitcoin because it'll skyrocket once everyone else bans it, and then no one will buy
Thailand or whatever, and they'll be like the Bitcoin country, and then you know, like it's like, you know, it'll be too many of these other countries are run so badly. We have the problem in Venezuela. We have like Venezuela, Argentina, Nigeria, right, Zimbabwe. These countries, no offense to their leaders, but they're just, you know, they're just run badly, and there's like an open insurrection by the people to just like ignore. So like, you know, and so those people are now into Bitcoin. So
I mean, as an American, I don't think you're in a position to talk about insurrections being ignored.
We had like a LARP insurrection. The sad thing is those people were just, it's so sad that, you know, you can really, because those people do have to, like, you see how those people have to go to like prison for a really long time, but at the same time you can really just tell that they were just like having fun, and they really didn't even know what they were doing. And the weird thing is, I don't know, it's an interesting thing, that event probably, you know, destroyed a lot of the support for Donald Trump. Actually, that's how those things go. So whether you liked it or not, I mean, we all learned something.
Oh yeah.
That day,
yeah.
So. And one of the things was that it's just actually really easy to just break into that building, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
that was funny.
By the looks of things, they just like, I feel bad for the people because they just sort of, It looks like the police just sort of opened the gates after a while.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, go for it. And the people just sort of idly stumbled in. And
see, but this is part of the thing. There was actually an incredibly complicated like game theory going on, because if those were actually like, you know, soldiers from the Chinese Communist Party or something, there would just be like all this machine gun. They would never have like gotten in. Actually, there'd be like people flying in on helicopters and shooting missiles and stuff. But it was because it was like so non-threatening that the police were like, I don't want to be like the guy who just opens fire on a protester and just kills them, you know? So it was because it was so objectively not a threat that paradoxically they were able to like, so there was a lot of like kind of complicated stuff, a lot of context going on, but it's sad because you can't like carve out an exception for people to say, oh, you know, if you're only having fun, then you don't have to go to prison. It's like, you know, like yikes. And it just gave it's annoying because it actually gave all those people that gave a lot of people a lot of political fuel, you know, like now all those, the left in Congress could say, see, we told you so, you know, he was Adolf Hitler the whole time. Now we need, and then they like closed everything down. If you go to Washington, D.C. now, there was like, they have like barricades and it's very 1984-esque. They're very well protected now, but it looks creepy and annoying. And, you know, so that's it. Yeah, it was, well, that was obviously an interesting event.
Yeah.
So it's a testament to America, though, that most people wouldn't, Americans have a very healthy disdain actually for the whole thing anyway, and so even if someone took control of Congress, most people just wouldn't care at all, and they would do, and even like most governors probably wouldn't care, and just every state would just keep going marching on the same way that before. It's part of, we have our free speech and we have our Second Amendment, and so people would just be like, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the horns guy over Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi.
Right, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people just hope, like, there's like the State of the Union, we're all in the same room. It's like a common joke to just hope, like, why can't we have just the meteor fall and just get rid of all of them, you know, in one fell swoop? And start.
Have you ever watched Designated Survivor? That doesn't go well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I feel like we got a bit off topic, and I'm hoping to shoot on here in a little bit. So do you want to just give people some info about what you do, where they can find your work, and you know, plug yourself a little bit before we finish?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have a blog. I try to write about like controversial Bitcoin topics, so it gets very advanced just like accidentally because that's what interests me. But I have a blog, truthcoin.info, and it is mostly about people's attempts to change Bitcoin into other things. So it's like Bitcoin versus Ethereum and all this other stuff was what it was originally about, and the block size debate and things are very complicated. Things like that. I have a Bitcoin project called DriveChain, and all the sites linked to each other. And the drivechain.info is the site that, paradoxically, or perhaps inevitably, that is a project about how Bitcoin can copy these other projects and simulate them. So you would send some Bitcoins to a different piece of software that would just pretend to be like Ethereum or something, and then you could do whatever you could do on Ethereum, you could do over there, and then you could get the coins back, and it would all be with just the one currency unit, and so you'd only ever have to invest in the one currency. That's the idea behind that idea, drivechain.info. And then all that prediction markets betting stuff, that is a project that is now called bitcoinhivemind.com. And there I have a cool little, I do have a bunch of videos, but there's one that's 20 minutes that tries to explain that plan that I was telling you about. And I gave that at Acapulco in 2019, I think. So that's the site. And then I'm TruthCoin on Twitter because that paper was originally called TruthCoin, and then the blog became TruthCoin. And then my last name is impossible to spell. So yeah, I'm TruthCoin on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put the links for everything in the description below for people, anyone wants to check that out. But yeah, Paul, thanks very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or sign up to our mailing list. Thanks a lot to our sponsor, ExpressVPN, the #1 most trusted VPN. Get lightning fast connectivity with servers in 160 locations across 94 countries. Keep your browsing privacy safe with ExpressVPN and get a 35% discount on 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. Don't forget my book is now out and available to order on Amazon and on bookshop.org. That's Brexit, the Establishment Civil War. And most importantly, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.